Good. Fascinating day. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope this will be a slightly different take on the same theme. My background is I was a research scientist for 10 years, and then I was ordained and I served as a vicar in a tower block estate in Barton Hill in Bristol through the 1990s, essentially. Resigning from there in 1998, wanting to explore a new way of relating faith to society. And I'm going to tell you some of where I've been. I want to say that I'm going to describe 4 different projects to you, none of which I want to be known as founder of, because they've all been done as teamwork, and I mean serious teamwork, whereby a group usually of half a dozen people were working together to make something happen. And none of them are faith-based organisations in the sense that we've been talking today. And I'll explain how what they are is part of my personal journey to reimagine the place of faith in society. So, if I begin here, as I said, in 1998 I stopped being a vicar. By about 2008 I'd done some pretty serious exploring. It was the time of the financial crisis, and it was also the time when we were, and I was particularly, becoming aware that climate change and other environmental issues were bearing down on us with really serious potential consequences for the human and, well, for the earth. And it was at that moment that I became aware that our relationship with the earth would be the big story of the 21st century. And therefore decided that I needed to commit myself to trying to address that in whatever ways I could. And so the background to this journey now, for the last 8 years or so, is a crisis is approaching. And this is not just about environmental stuff, it's actually about the whole way that human society is currently set up. Our existing institutions are failing. Our political institutions are failing. I don't know if you need me to underline that, but I think they are. I think they're dominated by a particular neoliberal economic model that is not only raping the earth but doing all sorts of other bad things. And our religious institutions, I'm afraid, are failing as well, in that they're failing to find traction, failing to find space where they can offer what they have to our society. And there's a need for a new approach. So that's where I come in, that's where I'm coming from. I am, let's just see if this will, okay, that's all right. So, thinking, big picture thinking for a moment, as part of reimagining the place of faith in society, I think there are 2 forms of knowledge that we work with. One is scientific knowledge, which is about paying a certain sort of focused attention to the world, understanding its material base and trying to build our understanding of the world up from fragments. That's what science does. There is another way of approaching truth, and it's the approach essentially done by humanities, but also it's about story, it's about narrative, it's about creating a theory of all that we experience. So it wraps up our emotions, our feelings, our relationships, as well as any facts of events, etc., into one whole. It's imaginative. We have to imagine why one another is doing things. We have to come to judgments about those things, and we create a narrative to express that in the public realm. It's terribly important. Narratives underlie why we go to war, and narratives actually are at the basis of public discussion about everything important, and faith should be part of the public narrative, is what I'm saying. Okay? So that's why I think in those two ways. And I would say that every person on earth has faith in the sense that they have a set of beliefs, values and commitments with which they approach the world. If you want to read something about this from a psychologist, I'd recommend Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind. He has shown psychologically that actually we don't rationalise about everything. We're not nearly as rational as we pretend to be. We actually approach most of the things we do in life with a commitment. And that comes from this, what I call the sacred centre of our lives. And we all carry beliefs, values and commitments. Some are religious and some are not. But we have it, and to recognise that as the source of our passions and our energies and our commitments is, I think, a hugely important thing for reimagining the place of faith in society. And, for example, one of the things that I've been interested in doing in the last few years is trying to draw out, from a biblical basis, an understanding of what the hope of the people of faith through the Judeo-Christian story held. And so you look at people like Amos and Micah and Jeremiah and Isaiah, the prophetic words of the Old Testament, and what did they really hope for? What was their vision of what they called shalom? That peace which was not just a peace between human beings, but a peace of the whole creation. And I've written a book there called The Dream That Inspired the Bible, which is available if you'd like to have a look at it. But what I've drawn from it, and I use at the forefront of most of my talks, are these three values: justice, well-being and harmony with the earth, as trying to express shalom, as I understand it, as a biblical vision of hope. And I suppose what I'm going to try to do now in these projects I describe is try to show how I've personally tried to express those values. So I set off, and the parish that I had served had a vicarage that was set in the middle of this tower block estate. It was no longer a vicarage because they decided it wasn't a good place to live. It's a tough place for people to live. And so the church licensed the garden to us, and this is a charity that I formed called Project Agora, which is about active citizenship, to do a project where we opened up the garden, which is a third of an acre walled garden, to the community as a neighbourhood growing project, and to give people an experience of the natural world. So we grow food, we cook food, we invite people in, and that's the house, walled garden. This is an outdoor kitchen we built. The community has changed its character since I left. It was white working class in 1998. It's now 40% Somali, so it's been enriched, really, I'd say. But obviously, if we're working with the community, we need to make sure we relate to Somali people, and we did. And part of the way we're working cross-culturally is just by being terribly earthy. So we have a round house, which I don't know if you know what a round house is, but it's earth and wood in a round shape. And it was just like a storytelling place. We have this outdoor kitchen. We have a wild space here for the children, which is just a place they can explore. This is my friend Dar here, who is a Somali refugee. We have a strong relationship with an asylum seekers group who have put in place an asylum seekers allotment, and we have worked in partnership with that for a long time. Frequently have meals with loads of different nationalities present, which is lovely to experience, and we obviously cook foods according to culture. One of the things I longed for when we started this project, that the local church, in fact the church across the city, would join in. And we actually called it, we raised up a little organisation called Earth Abbey, as trying to express a Christian interest in the earth. And I'm sad to say it wasn't terribly popular. Now that may have been me, but actually Christian environmental organisations up and down the country would, I think, also express some frustration. in the amount of Christian interest there has been in environmental stuff. So I wasn't alone in finding that the response was a bit lukewarm, but I also found that going under a title like Earth Abbey was much too heavily religious for the secular people we wanted to work with. And so it raised all sorts of questions about who are you and what you're trying to do. And so we rapidly got to the place where we had to become just the walled garden. And we had to deliberately work across a broad coalition of people. And I'm actually really pleased we did that now, actually, because the project has been enriched by that process. But it was not what I originally intended. It's part of my journey. There we go. We have now essentially a land-based community centre in this tower block estate. One project. The next one I want to... that's just an event at the wall garden. Second project is a community-supported agriculture project. So some land next to the M32 became available. Half a dozen of us got together and we spent a couple of years designing, imagining what would become Sims Hill Shared Harvest. I have to run away from here at 4 o'clock to go to its AGM tonight. But we wanted to do agriculture in a different way. We wanted to do agriculture in a way that people could combine together to grow their food, and if you like, employ the growers to do it. So we have a couple of part-time paid growers. We have 10 people who work on the land and get their veg for free, but aren't paid. And we have a whole lot of other members who are paying a monthly share, as we call it. And we work shared risk, shared harvest. So that if the weather's bad, the whole community suffers, not the grower. And we don't go into debt. So in 2012, when it was a dreadful growing season, we had to get together in the autumn and say, now what are we going to do over the winter? Should we buy veg in, etc.? This is what it's going to cost. What are you going to do? And I think, personally, that feels better than the normal situation, which is the poor grower suffers from the bad weather, gets into debt and never gets out of it because food margins are so small. So that's Sims Hill Shared Harvest. That's what we're doing. We want to bring people into a relationship with food so that food is not just a commodity, but actually we understand the soil, we feel the weather, we know when we taste the food. Okay, that's the piece of land from a balloon a couple of years in. Okay, so that's Sims Hill Shared Harvest. Just another project trying to express something different, a different way of going about economy and community. There are now 90 members, 90 households, members of Sims Hill Shared Harvest from across the city, and we're not in debt, and that's great. So I say to the other directors, we're really strong. It might not feel like we're strong. We haven't got much money, but we're not in debt. And we've got 90 members, 90 households. And there is a certain real strength to that. So, okay, so it was in about 2009, a few of us got together, inspired by people like Totnes, Lewis, Brixton and Stroud, who'd all done printed currencies, to launch a local currency in Bristol. But our commitment was that if a local currency is going to be worthwhile, it has to be done across a whole city, and it has to be done in electronic and printed media. Why? Because currencies have to be done at scale if they're to be useful. The whole point about a currency is people have a choice about where they're going to spend it, so you've got to be at scale. And we thought it would be really interesting to try to do this across a whole city. And I'll come back to a bit more of why afterwards, why we did this, because that's important too. But anyway, so we set out, and it did take 3 years to get to launch. A little team of 2 or 3 grew into a team of 20 by the time we got to launch. These are the Bristol Pounds. One way we attracted attention to it was to do a community design competition across the city. I just passed some pounds around. There are 20s, 10s, 5s and 1s. Don't run off with them because I want to take them home. They're worth £1 sterling. People buy them into existence with sterling as part of their commitment to the local economy. So people are basically saying, I want to spend this money in the city, I want it to stay in the city, so I'm going to use Bristol Pounds. I want to support local businesses, and I just express myself as a citizen of the city. This is the £1 note. You can see Bristol across the middle of it, if you've got eyes to see it. Particularly beautiful £1 note. They've got 9 different security features on the notes. They're not counterfeitable. In fact, I think they're more secure than sterling is, partly because it's not worth really counterfeiting these. We have a mobile phone payment system in place. A friend of mine said to me, I think you could do this by mobile phone, Chris, I'll build you a prototype. So he did. And we have a mobile phone system in place. You go into a shop, you just text, pay, your PIN number, the trader code and the amount, or if you're up to it and you've got our latest app, you don't even have to do that. You can just put in your PIN number and the amount. It goes to the computer, you send it to the computer, and your account is automatically deducted. You get a confirmation text on your phone saying you've made a payment to member Small Street Cafe of £6.50, and the cafe gets a text on their mobile phone saying you've received a payment from so-and-so, so-and-so, and it all happens in the same sort of time that a card transaction takes. It's rather fun as well, actually. So we can pay by mobile phone. We can also pay... Oh, I haven't got this one. I don't think. No. Well, you can also pay online. So you have an online bank account, and you can make payments like you make BACS payments from your account. You can do it in Bristol Pass. So we've been going now 2.5 years. The launch was absolutely crazy. The bald-headed man in the background is me. But we got the mayor of the city, the Lord Mayor of the city, to stand there behind one of the nails, as they're known in Bristol. You know the nails? You pay on the nail, you put your gold on, and you take your goods. It's an ancient place of exchange in the city, the historic trading heart of the city. The Lord Mayor held up a Bristol pound and said, "What will anyone give me for this Bristol pound?" And Joe Wheatcroft from Source, which is a local food shop, came forward with a loaf of bread and said, "I will give you your loaf of bread for your Bristol pound. This loaf of bread for your Bristol pounds." And the time was precisely 12 o'clock Bristol time. You probably don't know, but Bristol has a different time from London, which is 11 minutes after London. Because before the trains came, we did have a time 11, and we've got one clock which is just above this place, which actually has Bristol time on it as well as Greenwich Mean Time. So we opened trading in Bristol Pound at 12 noon on September the 19th, 2012. At 12 noon Bristol time. It's just rather fun. And then people queued up to get their Bristol pounds. The first person in the queue said, "I'll have £500, please." And I didn't know how much we were going to give out on that day. And I had to go back to our main safe 3 times during that day to replenish the number of Bristol pounds people wanted. It was just extraordinary. And the world's media were there. People were hearing about the Bristol pound in Australia, and we were on Ukrainian TV. I've been on Chinese TV. And I said to them, "How many people will be listening to this?" And they said, "Oh, about 1 billion." And of course, the first question they ask you is, so how do the authorities feel about this? Because for the Chinese, you'd get closed down straight away. As part of our warm-up to the Bristol pound, we actually did go to the Bank of England, because there were some legal questions, and we didn't want to do it by letter, and we knew it would take months, and they could tire us out by letters. So we went to see them. And I bought a new suit, which I don't think I've worn since. But I bought a new suit, I don't know why, it's just one of those things. 5 of us went. Yeah? 5 minutes? Oh, shit. Right. Okay. Well, anyway, we had a good time at the Bank of England. There was the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, Treasury, the Bank of England notes. They were all there around one table. And they were really constructive, actually, and we cleared off most of the legal questions. So, if I've only got 5 minutes, I'll skip on. The 700 businesses also accepting Bristol Pounds, that's the online banking thing. The mayor takes his whole salary in Bristol Pounds, and the local authority accepts business rates in Bristol Pounds. They will be accepting council tax in Bristol Pounds from this April. We still have a long way to go, though, I have to say, towards the sort of volume we need to be sustainable. We take a small transaction charge in the tax payment, and there are various other ways we take a little bit of income, but it's not yet sustainable, but we hope it will be in 2 to 3 years. I want to go on to this. This is a food initiative. We've heard about food banks and things. This is trying to develop a different model of food retail, where people in neighbourhoods form a buying group to source their food from local producers. And we create a web tool to allow them to do that. So we have, and we are particularly focused on the disadvantaged areas of Bristol. So we're trying to set up buying groups in these areas. So it's a community development piece as well as an attempt to get fresh food from good places. And bring all our friends in who are growing food around the city. That's how a buying group works. We're trying to be an alternative type of economic system, including those who are most hard-pressed in society, encouraging healthy eating and mutual enterprising, and a can-do approach to life. So we're going to encourage mutual enterprise within the cooperative. So Real Economy is a new cooperative in the city, which may go to other cities in due course. It's launched the last few months. There are 8 buying groups in existence, 81 members of the cooperative at this point, but we're just starting. So I want to complete this story. This is just a statement about asset-based, whatever you call it, but I hate the word consumers. We're not consumers. We're not clients. We are citizens with gifts and power to make real communities. Thought you'd like that, Al? Yeah. I want to talk about how we make teams, because a lot of the frustration in churches, it seems to me, is the frustration of knowing how to work together with whoever it is we're trying to work with. I work across shared values and clear purpose. So with the Bristol Pound, we basically said, this is what we're going to do, and we will work with anyone who shares the values implicit in what we're going to do. So if you care about the earth, if you care about localising the economy, etc., join us. And that's all the projects I've worked with are working around shared values and clear purpose. A lot of the problem in churches, in my experience, 30 years or more experience, is there isn't a clarity of purpose. And actually there often isn't shared values. And values aren't talked about enough. So there we are. The big struggle today, as I see it, is for a renewed relationship with creation and against the love of mammon. Localising is the big strategy, as Al said. It allows us to not only to cut carbon, but actually renew local community life and produce some sort of resilience against the future. Finance, energy, food and governance are key change drivers as far as I see it. This is something I'll talk about in the questions if you want me to. It's about how we renew spirituality in our age. And this is about a new movement I'm thinking of trying to put together, which is about recognising the sacred centre of our lives so as to transform our relationship with the earth. I would love to be able to produce a coalition like Jubilee 2000 produced a coalition. Do you remember back in the 80s? So there you had churches, there you had aid agencies, they had all sorts of broad coalition of people working for justice in terms of third world poverty. I would love to be able to do the same thing in the environmental scene. I would love to be able to form a coalition which had in it churches and religious groups. It had in it the transition movement, which is tremendously important. It had in it the aid agencies that are interested in the environment and in terms of trade justice and all those things. And it had in it the radical environmentalists who are actually really interesting people. We have a group of people, 800 strong in Bristol, who are like people looking to live a different sort of life, people living with very little money, people really strong on being community. I want to be able to try to embrace all those people around a movement to do with the earth. This is some of the resources that I can offer. There's a new book, Rise Up with Wings Like Eagles, that I hope will be published this year. So I better stop because I bet I've done more than 5 minutes. But